Hello, welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. Today we're talking about how the Chargers compare to the rest of the AFC West, just purely when it comes to draft position versus consensus board. I'm not here to talk about whether that's a fit, the grade of the player, the context, all of that. I'm just looking at consensus board versus draft selection. Now, I did do a video for this already comparing the Chargers to the Ravens, actually, because the Ravens, I think, just off the top of my head, they feel like they're one of the more favored teams in the media when it comes to draft value and having very good drafts, at least recently. So I compared them to the Ravens already. That's a members only video. I went through all the Chargers picks and just, plucked out notable reaches, notable steals, that sort of thing. So a more Chargers specific in-depth one and a comparison to the Ravens, that was a members only video, a Patreon only video. That's not going public anytime soon, if at all. Today, we're talking about the AFC West. I didn't want to do this. I really didn't. I didn't even think I was going to do this, but I finished up the Ravens versus Chargers video. I went to bed, was about to go to sleep, and then someone messaged me and said, "Well, I liked that video, but how do they compare to the rest of the AFC West?" Of course, I get out of bed, get on my computer, and I start going to work on this. It did take a bit, so I figured I'd share it. I was going to make it a members only video, but I think there's enough work in here where I feel like it's worth sharing with anybody who's curious. So the other thing we talked about in that video, it's context. Everything context, weighted rounds, why this, why that, every year, why did someone fall, all that. We talked about the limitations of what I'm about to show you here. There's plenty of limitations. I just trust that if you have not seen that video, or even if you have, I trust that you, the audience, understand that there are limitations to this. I'm not saying, oh my God, what a terrible pick. I'm just looking at consensus board versus where they were selected. So I trust that you guys understand that. Let's get into it. So I'm not going to go round by round by round by round, but I just want to show that I did put every player since 2016 into this Google sheet for all four AFC West teams. Now, the consensus board only goes as far back as 2016. So unfortunately, I couldn't go back to, the Craig Mager pick or DJ Fluker or whatever. I couldn't go that far back for the Chargers, but honestly, I don't think I would do this whole video as far back as 2013 anyway. So you do get as far back as 2016. And again, Telesco hasn't been going against the same GMs since 2016. He hasn't even had the same coaches since 2016. So there's a lot of, again, context missing and whatnot. We're just looking at the numbers here. So what I did for each round, I'd put every player, their draft pick, their consensus ranking, and then just find the difference between their consensus ranking and the draft pick. If it's more positive, it's more of a reach. If it's more negative, if at all, then it's more of a steal. So that's just how I'm comparing these. Average difference between every player in each round. I'm not comparing the first round to the 6th and 7th round, just everyone in the first round, everyone in the second round, and so on. So there's 200 something players. I did round 1, round 2, round 3, rounds 4 to 5 as a cluster, and round 6 to 7 as a cluster. I figured round 6 to 7, rounds 4 to 5 is just kind of like a early day 3, late day 3 sort of thing. I just think separating 6 and 7, it's kind of the same range at that point. It's all a bunch of special teams guys, traits guys, or whatever. So that's how I separated them. Round 1, round 2, round 3, 4 and 5 together, 6 and 7 together. If you're watching this and you want to know what the colors mean, on our grade sheet when we did draft prospect grades, yellow was a first round grade, blue was a second round grade, green was a third round grade, orange was a fourth round grade. So it's just for me to, kind of work off and remember which team was in first, second, third, or fourth. Obviously, they're not grades. It's just a ranking. So what I'm about to show you, like I said, is very limited. I'm not a statistician. I'm not Arjun by any means. I just wanted to throw up a graph just so you guys have something to look at and just so you have something to work off of and so we can talk about it. So pardon me for not being the best stats guy. Again, if you want me to culture human stem cells, I'm all for it. The stats and the graph stuff, leave that to some other nerd like Arjun. So here's how it stacks up for the Chargers. The Chargers are in blue, Chiefs in a reddish, Raiders in black or orange, Broncos in an orangish color. That's the best we got. We'll work with it as is. So on the left, the y-axis is just your average difference. I kind of already talked about that. So the higher the bar, the more positive the number, the bigger the average reach, The smaller the bar, the more closer you are to being more of a steal or proper value, I guess. Again, there's no weight to these. Maybe everyone below 50 is fantastic value. I have no idea. Each round is obviously very different. There's a much bigger range of outcomes in round 6 or 7, or at least it should be, than round 1. That said, let's get into it. Where do you want to start? Let's go with the Raiders first. The Raiders are an awful team early on. They're like the Chargers, Chiefs, and Broncos. Their picks all fall between 3.25 and -1. So a range of about 4 on the consensus board. So they take a player within about 4 on average. The Raiders, a whopping 20. We're talking some early reaches. Let me find some big culprits here. Carl Joseph taking 65 spots earlier. Damon Arnett, 34 spots. Cleveland Farrell, only 11. I was a little surprised, actually. I thought that was a more perceived huge reach, but I guess not. Anyways, the Raiders in round 1, by far the worst team. In round 2, the Raiders by far are the worst team. Early on, they are not good. And I don't know if that's a, you know, ownership thing. The way it pans out, because the Raiders are a very good team after this, but it's almost like the owner or Gruden or something picks these players early, and then the GM and the scouts handle the rest, because round 1, they are by far the worst team. Round 2, by far the worst team. After that, the Raiders are second place in rounds 3, rounds 4 to 5, and rounds 6 to 7. They get they hold on to very good value. They don't reach every other round after. Well, maybe they do, but compared to the rest of the AFC West, they don't reach as much, or they find better value than almost every other team the rest of the draft. For whatever reason, rounds 1, rounds 2, massive reaches. I don't know why. Let's go with the Broncos next. The Broncos are the only team to not have a last place finish. However, they don't have any. They have one first place finish, but they don't have any last place finishes, so that's good. Not bad. Not bad from the Broncos. Round 1 is the only round that they have the edge in. It's the round that they actually, based on the consensus, they get more of a steal with -1, actually. So that's pretty good. There's actually only 2 rounds for all AFC West teams where there is a negative value. One of them actually is the Chargers. So the Broncos aren't bad. They're just kind of a right in the middle team. They have 3 third place finishes and 1 first place, 1 second place. So they're fine. They're fine. In round 1, though, they do get some pretty solid players. They do get pretty good value overall. But I guess when you're drafting like top 10, like Surtain at 9, Bradley Chubb at 5, you're not really finding any surprises there. So that's that. Then we'll go to the Chiefs. The Chiefs have 1 first place finish, 1 very notable first place finish in round 3. It's notable because the Chargers are the opposite. But the Chiefs do draft really well in round 3. I think that's your Chris Jones round. Let's actually look at it. So the Chiefs, that is your Kareem Hunt, Derek Nottie, Dorian O'Donnell, Kalen Saunders, Lucas Niang, Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal really helped them out here quite a bit. I don't know who Kivere Russell is. It's been a while since I've even heard half of these names, but he was a huge reach for them in round 3. But guys like Leo Chenal, Lucas Niang, that's really good value for them. So that really helped them out here. So not bad. So they're the best round 3 team, but they also have 2 last place finishes in rounds 4, 5, and then rounds 6 and 7. So day 3, they're not great in terms of reaching, in terms of reaching, they're not great. More significant reaches. Okay, so the Chargers. The Chargers overall, if you're just tallying up who wins the most, it's the Chargers. The Chargers do have an edge in terms of draft value, average difference in round 2, rounds 4 to 5, and round 6 to 7. So round two makes sense. I feel like that's your Nasir Adderley, that's your Asante Samuel Jr. A lot of good value there for the Chargers. It's kind of just always been that way for them. I feel like they always find a way to get a nice little steal or some good value in round 2. In round 1, they have a second place finish. And again, Telesco very much stays with it. Like, one of the reasons Trevor Penning was an option at 17 is because he fell right in between that range of where Telesco usually drafts. I mean, if you look at round one, it's pretty close. Like the difference is 6 or 9 in either direction. The Raiders 65. You look at some other like the Chiefs, there's 13, 14. So the Chargers stay very much so within those single digits. So a lot of solid value there. It's always players right within a certain range, which again, like this is a flawed set of stats and whatnot, but that is worth keeping an eye on moving forward. They're not going to take someone who's ranked 30th. They might get someone who falls to them, right? That's their biggest difference was Derwin James, but they're never really going to reach for someone who's 10 spots out. So if the Chargers are picking at 25 next year, you got to find someone who's within like a nice single digit range for them to take. If you're looking at someone in the 40s, it's probably not going to happen based on Telesco's history, which is a good thing. In the second round, they do get the best value. We talked about that. Holy Lord, the third round. I don't know what happens. Again, look, it's not a judgment of the players. There's no context, whatever. But just comparing them, man, the Chargers reach. And the funny thing is, this was the most consistent round for the other three AFC West teams. If you're just looking at them comparing to each other, right? Chiefs 26.1, Raiders 27.6, Broncos 28.8, Chargers 96.6. I mean, it is by far the biggest reach round of any team in the AFC West. It's huge. It's so significantly more than everybody else. And look, you can see like everybody falls within this in the AFC West, at least 26, 27, 28 range. Chargers 96.6. Now, why they make this reach, again, whole context thing. Is JT Woods a reach in round 3? Probably. But why did they make that reach? That's a whole different conversation. I'm just looking at consensus board here, but that's pretty notable. Otherwise, though, Telesco, best value rounds 4 to 5, best value rounds 6 to 7. No truly, or at least they have some. They do have one. Their biggest reach of any draft round is in round 7. But overall, not bad. Telesco is the best, or the Chargers, I should say, are the best value drafters in round 2, rounds 4 to 5, and round 6 to 7. And they're second place in round 1, and it's very, very close. It's very, very close. If round 3 got a little more figured out, this is the best drafting team in the AFC West. I think it is anyway, but that round 3 is quite a bit. It's a lot to take in. 96.6 being the average reach is ridiculous. But still, not bad, Telesco. Not bad. I think, we look at our individual teams and we think of, oh my gosh, that was a reach. Oh, here goes Telesco again. Oh, here goes this or that. But it's cool to look at this overall to see, well, we know about the Chargers and we know kind of where these picks should be going. But what about the rest of the AFC West? How do they compare to those teams? Is Telesco a bad drafter? Like we look at it, oh, is it better than Telesco, this and that? And maybe he's a bad drafter. But compared to the AFC West, it could be worse. And honestly, I think the Chargers have a case for being the best value drafting team. Now, whether they develop or whether they succeed or whatever, whether they even fit the team is a whole different story. But just in terms of value, I do think the Chargers are the best value drafting team, which is cool. That's really cool. Other than one glaring notable exception, the Chargers are first place in 3 of the 5. One of them being the second round, and 2 being day 3 is really cool, right? So some good early value, some good late value, one glaring ridiculous third round thing, but very, very solid for the Chargers. I'm actually really impressed. It's cool to look at this. I don't know if you guys find this as interesting as I do, but I know this hasn't really been specifically looked at for the Chargers. I think many people will look at JT Woods or whoever and go, awful, terrible. Telesco's terrible. And maybe he is. But let's compare it to other teams. And I think this really shows you that while there are certain problems with Telesco, round 3, it could be worse. And honestly, in terms of just value drafting, we should be lucky.